I'm here with Julie Hutchinson today, and I'm so excited. This individual is a powerhouse because she's dedicated decades of her experience in sales and leadership as an executive coach now, and she also works with organizations on building resilience. And she's worked with the military for 8 years on specific protocols and process for building our inner resilience, taking this approach of connecting the mind and heart to do so. And there's even biofeedback that's intertwined in all of her research and her applications. So today is about resilience. How do we build it in the face of stress and adversity and the ever-changing and fast-paced workplace culture that we see today? So Julie, thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So your background is fascinating, and resilience is one of the most important skills I think that we can cultivate. I also think resilience is sort of elusive as it relates to how do we build it and what are all of the factors that go into it. And so we're going to unpack that today. But as a starting point, let's talk about performance. I would love to hear from you. What are some missed assumptions around what performance actually means on the individual and organizational level?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually look at it as there's a real performance gap, especially in corporate America, because we look at performance. If somebody's not performing up to our standards, what we want to do is we want to change their behavior. Let's take a salesperson, for example. They're just not meeting their numbers. They've got to increase the pipeline. So let's change their behavior. We're going to have them call a lot more. We're going to have them dial more people during the day or reach out to them. What we're missing in that is, sure, you can change somebody's behavior and it may change their performance, but oftentimes it's really temporary. Really what we're looking at is you got to go underneath the surface. So somebody's behavior may change. However, if the way that they're thinking doesn't change, the behavior will just be temporary. We often talk, like psychologists talk about, well, let's change the way we think. Let's look at our mindset. There's even something that's underneath the think level, and that's the feel level, the feel and the emotions. When we look at emotions, emotions are typically generated from our heart. We feel a lot of emotions in our heart. Our heart sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. That's proven by science. So if we change our emotional state, it changes our heart rhythms, which then sends a different signal to the brain. So really where I see the performance gap is in corporations, don't just look at the behavior, learn more about the person, the thinking, and what's underneath that is the feelings. When you can work from that level or the physiological level of the individual, that's when true change happens. That's when performance changes. So I'll give you an example of this. I worked with a salesperson who had just gotten promoted, and he was going to be running a department. He had 3 people underneath him. And before he was just solo, just selling on his own. When he got to this management position, he still had to sell. And he told me, he goes, I honestly don't like selling. I feel like I'm bothering people. And the reason I feel that way is because I would see my father get these calls from telemarketers, and he would hang up the phone and he would go, those damn salespeople. And he just had this bad belief about salespeople. So I don't want to be that person. And so he said, well, tell me how you feel underneath all that. And he said, I have anxiety around it. So what we looked at is, what if you changed your perception of what sales is, that you're actually helping somebody? How do you feel when you're of service or helping somebody? He goes, I feel great. I can do that all day long. So we had him go into we have an app that we have that you put on your phone. It's a biofeedback app. We went in and started to change the feel, to change his physiology, so that tension of the anxiety began to relax, and he began to feel oh, okay, I'm in service. When he did that, we then restructured his belief pattern around sales. And when he did this, when he picked up the phone to make a call, he called from a completely different place in his physiology and his belief system. And what ended up happening is he blew his numbers out of the water that year. He actually increased his profit margins, and his pipeline ended up increasing tenfold. They ended up, I think the whole overall for the year, they were up by about 55% over what was projected, just based on this performance gap. We didn't change the behavior. We went all the way to the bottom, to the emotions, the physiology, and reframing what sales means to him.
That's a great example. And there is a gap, I think, right? Where there's a short-term, quarterly, instant gratification approach, maybe to leadership, and certainly sales performance and activity. I've been there. And we lose sight on some of the unconscious things driving the bus. So I appreciate that example. And a lot of people I talk to, or clients that I serve, or even my network on LinkedIn, there are a lot of director level or VP level, but a lot of people that are coming into their first leadership opportunity where they have a small team, similar to the man that you mentioned in your story. And that's an interesting place to be, right? Where it's, they were often previous top performers in their organizations, if we talk about us in a sales capacity. And then all of a sudden they're handed this leadership badge. And, you know, I'm not sure that high individual performance equates to solid leadership. And so I think resilience, right? Because there's going to be so much adversity. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty in navigating that water. So I'd love for you to just dive into your process and just dive into resilience and what it means to you, and how someone in that type of new leadership role can approach it and take something practical away from the conversation.
Yeah, great question. And I've seen this time and time again. I've seen stellar salespeople who could just knock it out of the park all day long get promoted because they're so great in sales. Then they have to manage a team, but their mindset hasn't shifted, their activities haven't shifted, and the way they feel hasn't shifted. So what we see is they're still in that individual performance role. They're not truly connecting with their teams. And so what we do in our process is we teach people it's the art of connection, right? If you're managing a team and you're in a leadership role, you've got to connect with your employees. You got to, first of all, know that they have to know that you care about them. You're not an individual performer anymore. You're inspiring people. And that's the effectiveness of a true leader, is how do you inspire people? So you care about them, you build that trust, and you connect with them. What we do in our process, as I had mentioned, is all based on the heart-brain connection. When you use the app, it teaches you to really get your heart into what we call a coherent state. When you're in coherence, we know that through science, that the electromagnetic field of our hearts extend 8 to 10 feet in front of us. And so I'm going to go a little bit deep and a little bit into science and a little bit way off what corporate America typically talks about. But this is what makes us so unique. So we can sense that there's a field in front of us. And when the heart beats, it creates electricity. That electricity is then affected by the field and affects the field that it goes into. Scientists now know that we can, with 75% accuracy, if I measured you, I'd be able to tell what your emotional state is right now through a measurement system. With that, when you're in the proximity of somebody within 8 to 10 feet, you kind of get a feel for what that person is thinking or feeling about you. You can't pinpoint it. You don't know the exact language, but you get a feel for it. What we work with executives is got to be, when you're in that field and you're working with people, your emotions affect the field and affect other people in front of you. So you got to be really careful what you're feeling and what you're thinking, because people will pick up on it. And so we do a lot of work around that connection piece of it. How do you authentically connect to your teams? How do you authentically inspire your teams? And how do you build that trust in the teams? So we work a lot with what we call relational energetics. What's the energetics that you're relating to with all other people? And you get super aware of your thoughts and your emotions while you're working and doing things with the team.
Yeah, what comes up for me is this entire new skill set and being super aware on the emotional level and the impact that that has on the room and on somebody else's emotional state and the outcome that we're all moving towards. So I love this because you're playing on this emotional level, and that's sort of my craft and everything that I put time and effort into with clients. So resilience, then, it's this unpack resilience a little bit for us too in this process. Like, is this whole process you're describing resilience?
It is. You know, the actual definition of resilience is it's the ability to bounce back from or recover from a stressful event. What we see is that people that don't have a capacity for resilience, if an event happens that's stressful, it can take them down for 2 or 3 days. So they're feeling stressed, their body's reacting, all the cortisol is kicking into their system, they don't sleep at night. People that build their capacity for resilience. So if you were to build a capacity, that same event might happen to somebody differently, and it wouldn't bother them at all because they've got that ability to bounce back. So in scientific terminology, when one can build the resilience capacity in the autonomic nervous system, you're balancing going into the state of flow, you're able to withstand stressful events much easier than if your resilience level were low, or what we call your inner battery. You know, Travis, we did a study in the military, and that study, what we did is we tested a bunch of soldiers pre-deployment and post-deployment. And what we found is that the soldiers, when they tested for pre-deployment that had a larger capacity for resilience, were less likely to come back with PTSD. And what we found is the people that had that low level of resilience, they were more apt to come back with PTSD. So we started doing a lot of training where we would build the resilience capacity within the soldiers, so that when they went to war, it didn't affect them as much. It didn't tear down the autonomic nervous system and the internal processes that were happening in the body on a hormonal level.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's important.
It's very important.
Is there one thing somebody can get started with actually building inner resilience? I know the process that you unfolded is really a deep perception shifting and self-awareness methodology, but is there something else too that anybody could get started with?
Absolutely. How about if I just walk you through a couple of the steps of the process so you can get on an experiential level
Great.
how this really will change. So what I'm going to have you do, and for those that are listening, I'm going to have you all do this too. And this is going to be an experience that you will feel inside your physiology. You literally will feel your physiology shift in this process, and that's what you want to get here. So I'm going to have you go ahead and close your eyes. I think it's a lot easier for people when they close their eyes because they can go internal and feel their bodies more. Travis, I'm going to have you think about something that really stresses you out. Think about something that causes anxiety, worry, frustration. And as you're thinking about this, I want you to feel this anxiety in your body, or the fear or the frustration. Just feel it. Notice where it is in your body. Notice how your body feels. Now I'm going to have you shift your attention to the area around your heart. With your attention on your heart, I'm going to have you inhale to the count of 5, and then exhale to the count of 5 or 6, whatever works for you. And now imagine that the breath is flowing in and out of your heart, even though it's coming in and out of your nose or mouth. And just breathe this rhythmic breathing pattern, imagining that it's flowing in and out of your heart. And now I'm going to have you think about something that really lights you up inside, something that you love. Could be a person, a pet, a place. And you're going to feel the emotion of love or appreciation. And now you're going to put all 3 together. You're going to breathe this feeling of love or appreciation in and out of your heart. And as you're doing this, I want you to notice how your body feels now. Does it feel any different than when you thought about something that was stressful and felt the emotions of stress, fear, worry, or anxiety? And you can slowly open your eyes. Now the key is when you open your eyes, see if you can keep your attention on your heart. Did you notice any difference between the feelings of fear or worry and the feelings of love or gratitude?
Yeah.
Where did you notice that in your body?
Where?
Uh-huh.
The back of my shoulders.
Okay. So when you were feeling the fear, did you feel that in the back of your shoulders?
Yeah.
And then when you were feeling the love or gratitude, did that feeling go away?
Yeah, there was just a relaxation.
Nice. That's what we call the physiology of optimal performance. Everybody feels this in a different way. When your body's feeling stress or worry, typically people will feel it in their neck, their shoulders, their breathing will be tight, their chest will be tight. When you move with the breath, attention, and emotion, your body feels different because the nervous system starts to act out in balance, if you will, or what we call coherence. And so what we do is we practice building this coherence more and more. And what's really cool about it is people will come in after the first week of training and they'll go, I feel amazing. Mm-hmm. That crick that was in the back of my neck is not there anymore because I'm practicing this so much. And my body just seems to be working better. Oftentimes I have people say, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I'm a lot more clear. Like my brain works better. So we just have tons of different stories about how people are using this technique. I call it the ABE technique. A is for attention, B is for breath, E is for emotion. So when people use the ABE technique, it's just so fun to see how their lives shift and how they bring more joy back into their lives and less stress, and they perform better.
Great. Super practical example. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that and guiding me through it. And that'll be it for the recording. And I appreciate you putting the time aside and sharing your wisdom from all your years of experience in this field and distilling it down into some bite-sized practical opportunities for people. And thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.